Hello, my name is Volker Türk. I'm currently the Undersecretary General for Policy in the Executive Office of the Secretary General. I have had quite a long career with the United Nations, in particular with UNHCR, both in the field and at headquarters. When I joined the United Nations, it was not just another job, it was really a vocation. It was a deep commitment to making a difference in people's lives. I think the background is I was born 20 years after the end of the Second World War. During my growing up, it was so important to understand the lessons from history. There was still this never again moment in Europe and a lot of lessons to be learned. And I mean, when I was young, I wanted to dedicate my life to really making a difference in other people's lives, to look at the world as a whole, to see the interconnectedness. So I think that deep commitment to making a difference in people's lives is what has guided me the most, but also a sense of optimism amidst some of the doom and gloom that we often face when we work, especially in the humanitarian sector, but also on conflict resolution issues. I think this sense of optimism is extremely important. And the third area that I think has been very important for me is a sense of humility. We don't have all the answers. We need to listen. We need to engage. We need to be prepared to throw away our assumptions. And we really need to work on ourselves on a daily basis. And I think that's really, for me, it has been for me very formative in my own leadership. It's the engagement with people, both, especially with UNHCR, it's learning from refugees themselves. It's been a huge learning curve because we are always reminded what it is that we have to do. And it's really also this sense of service to people, to know what is in the interest that people, refugees and stateless people around the world have themselves. But I've also seen this now in the Secretariat on the policy front. We need to understand where people are coming from, what it is that their aspirations are, their needs are, their rights are, their perspectives are, and take that very seriously and engage with them. And I think it's also the same with our colleagues and our teams. If we are not able to listen, if we're not able to engage, we're not going to be very good leaders. And I think for me, this sense of humility that I've mentioned before is incredibly important when we lead teams, that we are a part of a team. We are not above it. We are with our teams, and we get the best out of teams by listening to each other, engaging with each other, and creating an atmosphere of trust and safe space that allows also dissenting views to come through. And I think, of course, over the years, we know the type of errors that we have made, and we learn from them. But that's part of growing up and part of becoming and developing leadership, because we are not perfect. We need to acknowledge it, and we need to learn the lessons from what has gone wrong and what has gone right, and build on it, and also really understand what has worked well, and build precisely on the achievements, and analyze a bit how these achievements came about. I think there are a couple of important areas, apart from the usual competencies that we all need to have as leaders. In the current world, we see a lot of short-termism. I really believe that we need to engage in strategic foresight on a systematic basis, and it is especially for leaders to do this. Otherwise, we get caught up in the daily grind, in the urgent issues. We really need to constantly find a way to step back, to reflect, and to look ahead. That's extremely important in leadership. And that's strategic foresight. We also have to envision the future in a particular situation. We need to think through what our role is if we envision a particular future. And the futures can be breakdown or breakthrough scenarios. But if we ask ourselves, what's my role? What's the role of my teams in order to achieve the breakthrough? It is a very different perspective on the type of activities that we're engaged in on a daily basis. I think the second one is to understand behavior of people in a much more profound manner. And there is this term behavioral science that's very important, but it is also mindfulness. It's mindfulness of our own actions. It's mindfulness in relation to what other people may feel or may aspire to, and that mindfulness and it affects both our leadership within teams, but also in relation to the type of work that we're doing. And the third one is being outcome oriented, but not at the expense of driving an outcome without taking into account how we achieve it. But outcome means we constantly try to look at the tools that we have at our disposal in order to achieve it. And that in the humanitarian area is extremely important. And there's not only one solution, there are usually more than one. The fourth one, and it's often mentioned, is innovation. And innovation has become a little bit of a buzzword. But let's look at innovation. What does it actually mean? It means that we question ourselves, that we question our assumptions, that we try to find a better way of resolving an issue that has often been long-standing. I mean, bureaucracies and institutions have a tendency to go back to the old habits. And we know that old habits die hard. So let's revisit some of these old habits and see whether we can't do our job better. And it's not just about using digital transformation or digital cooperation issues, but also artificial intelligence. It's also just a mindset of working differently and questioning our assumptions. So I think these are some of these, if you like, new areas that the Secretary General himself has put forward in our Common Agenda report as what he would envisage as a UN 2.0. A good leader is someone who is able to craft a vision that is based on reality, because vision sometimes can be so utopian that it's moving away from reality. It has to be grounded in reality. But it is also someone who can bring the best out of people within a team, who is able to assemble a team that is motivated. So it's a question of how you motivate, how you communicate. And it is someone who creates a safe space for people to shine and to be able to disagree, to be able to share knowledge, to share information, to have, if you like, a hub of creativity. And of course, once decisions are taken, you need to implement them. But there is always this creative space within teams that we really need to protect much more and to nurture in a way that inspires people to motivate and get on with the often very complex issues that we have to deal with on a daily basis. So yes, I think that's what I would understand to be a good leader, not just in the humanitarian sector, much more broadly.